the center of the courtroom, under bright white light, two plastic hearts found love at first sight. One had a bullet hole, the other had a frown, but when the trial paused, the baby love went down. It's hot mannequin love in the court of law. No breath, no blood, just a flawless jaw. Struck a pose, then struck a spark, made of fiberglass, but lit up the dark. Hot mannequin love with the lenses askew. Who knew Exhibit A would look so into you? She leaned just right, he's sweet just so, like Cupid fired a dart through a Velcro torso. The jury looked confused, the bailiff blushed, the stenographer typed, objection, they're flushed. Hot mannequin love, no heartbeat, no shame, but they set off fire in a dart through a Velcro torso. The jury looked confused, the bailiff blushed, the stenographer typed, objection, they're flushed. Hot mannequin love, no heartbeat, no shame, but they set off fire. The law's just the same. Crime scene dolls, now courtroom flames. In love so real, it should be in chains. Hot mannequin love, not legal but true. Just don't let the judge catch them kissing in view.
Good evening, everybody. We have to pay homage, whatever, to the mannequins. They are in love. Pedaltown says so. Daddy Shortnuts, hello. He saw yesterday's version. I changed it to take all the naked mannequins out of it. I didn't want to get in trouble. So far, I haven't been in trouble yet, but there's still time. I didn't realize I had I put yesterday's together quickly, and I didn't realize I had so many uncovered mannequins in there. Women, of course. No men. I don't know which would be worse. Probably men. I'd probably get in trouble for that one. AT1, thank you so much for joining Discord. Good to have you in there. Gabby, thank you for starting me off with a $5 super chat that says, hey, AJ, hey. Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. I kind of needed that. I'm not going to lie. I am here. I'm good. Carmen called me today. Thought it was Monday. I had another friend think it was Monday. I'm like, stop trying to put me back to yesterday. So I'm better than they are because I know it's Tuesday. Hello for a minute, Annabelle. Good to see you. What's up, old soul? How are you today? Well, flashbang. No, that can't be true. That can't be true. It can't. I kind of hope it is. I kind of hope it is. Oh, man. Hilarious. Hilarious. I'm glad you're here, Gabby. All right. So we are on back to Betty. I do want to correct something I said yesterday. So obviously I am not an attorney. Never claimed to be one, but I as far as what I think, Shonda was denied a new trial on the incompetent part of her motion. But I do still believe, I haven't gone back to re-listen to it yet because I didn't have time today, that he did dismiss her motion without prejudice, which like leaves that open. But then there's still is going to be that hearing for her saying that she doesn't remember signing the waiver to say that they could proceed in court without her, and that basically, like, she was kind of accusing Mr. Johnson, her defense attorney at the time, of like signing for her, forging her name. What? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. What's up, Adair? It's about time you got here. I did a morning stream for you and everything, and you were not there. So sad. Thought you were just maybe out getting coffee. Oh, no, but nobody said anything in the comments. I was just thinking about it. Flash man. Is this really real? The uncommanded discharges. I can't AT1. Okay, thank you. 'Cause it's hilarious. It would have been hilarious either way. It would have been hilarious either way. I don't know any. I know the name 6 Hour, but I can't tell you anything about it. Like, I don't know if it has uncommanded discharges. Well, she's putting her. Yes, she's still putting her, because he doesn't represent her anymore. She's got a new attorney now. And if I was Mr. Johnson, I would say, peace out. Bye. Where do I sign, Judge? Where do I sign? I did, Adair, last Friday. It's kind of like an eclipse. There won't be another one for, I don't know, 6 years. She does not. Flashman. If Flashman says something like that, don't buy it. Put your wallet away. Keep your money. It's a trick. It is a trick. 34 years. I don't know when the next eclipse is, because they happen all the time in different parts of the world. But anyway, back to Betty. So we saw part 1 of Dr. DiFrancesca. I think it's her name. How you say her last name? Yesterday. She actually saw Betty. She said 9 times, which is different from the first doctor we saw, who had never met Betty and really only seemed there to push his book. He didn't help Betty. He didn't hurt Betty. He didn't do anything for Betty. So at least Dr. DiFrancesca saw Betty. She met with her, talked to her. She, communicated with her. She has laid out a litany of things honestly, you guys were pretty entertaining in chat, and I kind of zoned out a little bit on her testimony yesterday. But so I know she said, like, Betty was depressed. Got it. Understood. Buy it. She said something about borderline personality disorder. I think that's probably fair. She said something with a narcissistic disorder. Fair. I don't remember if she said, like, she was bipolar or not, or if they were just maybe thinking. So this trial took place in 1991. So they were only on the DSM-3. I don't know if that makes any difference or not. Are we on 5 now? But she's just laid out a bunch of stuff. It kind of got a little muddled for me too, of, does she have these things? Can she have all these things? And does it excuse her for what she did? Because a lot of people fight depression, and a lot of people fight bipolarism. Is it bipolar? And a lot of mental health issues, but they don't do that. Hello, June. How are you? Good to see you. Hope you're well today. I can flash fan, unfortunately. So today we will see, and then we saw her lawyer. He's very quick-tempered, which is kind of ironic, right? You've got Betty who lost it and kind of flipped out, and then a quick-tempered lawyer representing her. Yikes. So today we will see if he's calmed down and have the rest of his direct examination. We'll do cross-examination, which I think will be done by the gentleman sitting there at the table with the prosecutor lady. I can't think of her name. And then I'm sure he will redirect, and that will be it for Dr. DiFrancesca. So let me know how the sound is. Should be the same as it was. Carrie Wells, thank you. I should know that. It's not a hard name to remember. According to the good Dr. Betty is worse than bipolar. She has borderline personality disorder with histrionics. Oh, yes, histrionics. I'm saying it right. I remember hearing that word yesterday. It took me back to the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. Yes, Attorney Wells, and I'll forget again. So if you guys had to remember for me. Yes, we did leave off with the man baby. With the man baby child infant tantrum lawyer. It was pretty sad. It was pretty sad. Thank you, Adair. All right, let's do this, shall we?
The personality disorder that she acquired, did that affect how she related to Dan Broderick after they split up and the start of the divorce?
Yes, both of her personality disorders, I think, affected how she functioned and how she related after the split up.
And can you explain that to us?
Well, she was exceedingly emotionally dependent on Mr. Broderick. And so let me divide it between the borderline personality disorder and the histrionic personality disorder as best I can. She was exceedingly emotionally dependent on Mr. Broderick and had been in the past. This continued through the separation and the divorce proceedings, so that she had a very difficult time establishing and developing a separate identity. She saw him as somebody who was all-powerful, and she had him on a pedestal in terms of his brilliance. She saw him as somebody who could be ruthless in dealing with other people. She did not have confidence in herself in terms of solving problems. He still had tremendous control over her life on a daily basis in terms of his name. Early in the split up, his name was on the house and on her car and on the insurance. Everything was in his name. She had to get the check. Any support money came from him directly. And early in the breakup, it would sometimes be withheld. He had the power to withhold visitation with her children, so that she never really got a chance to break away and start developing her own sense of power, her own sense of identity, her own sense that she could master the environment. Going on to the histrionic personality disorder, she was basically a people pleaser and did things in broad strokes. Since she had no identity of her own, the person who she attempted to model in terms of how to solve problems was her perception of Dan Broderick. So that when she then would try to approach or solve a problem, it was in a bombastic way, which I think is part of it is because she is a dramatic person, and that's part of the histrionic part to her. But part of it is because he was the problem solver in their lives, and she modeled what she thought would be his way of mastering a situation. in her diaries, you see pages.
I'm sorry, Doctor. I think we're becoming, we're going into an area at this point. She's asking questions. Did she talk about after the split up anything about her anchors or what was her guiding, whether she had a guiding force?
She said that her
Overall, you can answer that.
she said that her guiding force had always been Dan Broderick. He made the big decisions in their life. He made decisions even with regard to things that are typically, or at least prototypically thought of as women's decisions, like changes in the house. And he was the person who was the strong voice that gave her a sense of identity. She felt that she had disappeared as a person in their marriage, and now she was still looking for something to guide her during this separation and the divorce.
The things that she had felt strong about as far as her identity before the divorce, were those affected in any way after the split up and the divorce?
Objection, ask and answer. Overall, you can answer that.
Her only sense of identity, I won't say only, that's too strong a word. Her chief sense of identity was being a mother and a wife to the wife to Dan Broderick and the mother to his children. And this is where she got her source of strength. This is where she got her source of power. This is where she got her reason to live, reason to be.
Okay. Now, is there a such thing as splitting?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is a symptom that you very often see in someone who is a borderline personality disorder, and it involves several things. One is seeing things in extremes, and one moment you might see somebody and feel consumed by affection or love for that person, and the next moment, next day, next hour, you might see that same person and be consumed with hate or rage towards that person. And the reason what's happened is that there's no real executive function inside of you that says, wait a minute, how can you love somebody one minute and hate the person the next minute? There's no force or guide inside of you that makes you take in all the evidence and make sense of it and lead you and guide you to then making statements and behaving as if it's balanced.
So would you then expect to see things such as in a diary page where she might,
Objection, lady. Well, overall, you can answer that. Go ahead, finish the question.
where she might make strong statements about how she feels about her family or children
Yeah.
at any given time?
Statements, she will contradict herself. In other words, she will make very strong statements in giving one impression at one point, and then equally strong statements giving another impression at another point. And you see that throughout her period of time after 1983.
You mentioned a histrionic personality disorder. Is that something that you diagnosed her having?
Yes.
And what is that?
A histrionic personality disorder is characterized by someone who's, again, has a very poorly developed sense of identity, and their identity is typically in relation to other people. They see themselves in relation to other people. Their chief fear is that they feel inadequate and that they cannot master and solve problems themselves. They need other people to help them master and solve problems. So that you will see someone who is a people pleaser. They will try to get other people to help them and guide them. You will see someone who needs a lot of reassurance and needs a lot of attention. There is a dramatic flair to getting this attention and getting this reassurance. So you will see someone who does things with broad strokes and in a dramatic way. You see emotion that is very changeable and can be very shallow, for example, fleeting from one emotion to another very quickly. You see an impressionistic style of speech, and underlying that impressionistic global style of speech is very impressionistic and global thinking. They will talk more from their feeling than from what they know, and will make overgeneralized statements about things that sound like an exaggeration.
Now, when you use the term broad strokes, they do things in broad strokes. What are you talking about?
Overruled.
Examples in Mrs. Broderick's life about doing things with broad strokes would be the banging into the door of Mr. Broderick with her car. That's a very dramatic way to get attention. And another would be the burning of his clothes when she...
Can we please stop referring to it as bumping or banging? She crashed. Okay. She crashed into his house. Like the door of his house, yes, but his house. With her kids inside of the house that she assumed would have been eating dinner, so they would have been in the back of the house. She didn't know where they were. Stop saying it that way. Yeah, it's a little bump, just a touch, not the kind you even report to insurance.
feels that he is being unfaithful to her. That's a very dramatic type of thing to do.
Okay. And when you say they're very impressionistic with global thinking, what are you?
They're not, people who have this style do not think well in details and facts. They think more in impressions. And an example, I think, from Mrs. Broderick is...
Hello, Baker. It's insane that they keep saying, this woman keeps saying, using the word that she banged into the house. Betty herself says she bumped into the house. Like she tapped it, a little love tap. Like, good grief. Helltown, her hair can't be taller today because this is the same day. It was just after lunch. So I guess it could be. Whew. In high school, she was voted most likely to drive a car through the marital home. I tried. Old soul. I've never accidentally bumped into a residential door before. And Betty didn't accidentally bump into their door either. I love it. The kids were in the house at that one, unless there were kids in the car, because they asked, the kids were at their dad's. Because she said something about they were eating dinner, they would have been in the back of the house. Like, so she thought they were saying, good grief, ridiculous. Oh, I did not, Bastian, but thank you. Get it right. She drove into the house via the front door. But AT1, don't forget, according to Betty herself, she missed the columns in the front of the house. That's how good her driving is. So, thumbs up, Betty. Okay. Oh my gosh. This is crazy. This lady's hair is driving me nuts because it's so messy. Like it just started growing on me yesterday. I was with you guys. But now today, it's going to take a little time. It's messy. I don't like it.
That she will say, I never got any visitation. Well, when you stop her and you ask her about that, she can tell you about times where she got visitation, but the feeling that she had was that this was the way things were, and she's reacting from her feeling.
So if she's talking about something where she might get a visitation, one visitation a month, she might make a statement, I don't have any visitation.
That's right. It's an overgeneralization.
Okay. And does that reflect how she feels at the time?
That's correct.
Okay.
She is more comfortable. It's more a habit to talk from her feeling states, and that's the habit she's developed.
Okay. Now, again, when we use the term histrionic as a personality disorder, are there people who have a histrionic style to them but don't have a disorder?
Yes.
Okay. And what kind of people are those?
Objection unless it relates to the particular defendant.
Well, sustained. Assume the defendant doesn't fall in that category, does she, Doctor?
Well, Your Honor, I think that there's evidence that she did prior to 1983.
All right, then you can answer it. Go ahead.
I'll object to this person testifying all down in 1982. Unless she knows.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. You can answer that, Doctor.
That a histrionic person would be somebody who would be fun-loving, kind of a madcap, who would do things impulsively and spontaneously, typically very whimsical in their speech and impulsive in what they will do. Usually they are people pleasers, even as a style, so that there's a sense that they will acquiesce and do what you want to do rather than push what they want to do. Typically very entertaining and dramatic, but and fun-loving. That's the style.
Now, you found this to be a disorder when you interviewed her.
Yes.
And now, is this also a disorder that you would normally expect to find in early adolescence?
I don't understand the question.
In other words, when something becomes a disorder, it's because it interferes with their.
Objection to counsel testifying.
Well, you can lead in this area. Go ahead, Mr. Earl.
It's because it interferes with their interpersonal relationships. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. Is that something that you usually find from early adolescence?
If you typically, any personality disorder, you typically see it beginning in adolescence and in early adulthood. Yes.
Okay. Are there things that can cause a style to turn into a disorder?
Objection is vague and not particularly focused on it.
Overruled.
Certainly a trauma, a series of traumas can cause somebody to become disordered, and then their personality style becomes enlarged and becomes no longer useful to them. In other words, it's so enlarged that it interferes with their being a problem solver.
In assuming from this case that Elizabeth Broderick in 1983 was 35 years old, you would expect that the years preceding that this disorder would have manifested itself. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And did it appear to you that this disorder was something that manifested itself after 1983?
Yes.
Are there things in the literature where you can find people who have adaptive styles that become maladaptive through trauma, such as hostages or something like that?
Objection vague and assumes facts, not evidence.
Overruled. You can answer that. Just yes or no.
Yes.
There was, you were aware that Mrs. Broderick had at times was using very strong language. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did that relate any of that to what you saw of her psychological?
Owie. Sorry. That's on not my end. That's awful. I don't know what that is. And my, okie dokie. I don't know how long this horrible sound lasts. That's bad.
Yes.
Gonna mute you. This is ridiculous. It's like a power saw. I'm saving your ears. That's the worst noise on earth. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm sorry. WTF. When did it start snowing? Someone get up and move the TV antenna. Flashbang, you're the youngest, so you got to go do it. That's right. That's what you get for being vintage. So you have to go move the antenna, twist it around till we yell at you and tell you to stop. And go back because you moved it too far. You didn't stop quick enough. That's awful. I'm going to try to find where this stops at. Holy crap.
See in person suffering from personality disorder.
Sustained. Sustained.
See in person suffering
All
from
right, that's
personality
close
disorder.
enough.
Objection, asked and answered.
Still
No,
horrible.
Sustained.
Well, okay, I'll take your word for it, AT1, but that noise was right up there. That's right.
The I have one moment, Your Honor.
Certainly.
Flashkin, you don't remember the time before remotes? The youngest one always had to go stand up by the TV and turn the channel until you got to where the adults in the room wanted it. Like, that was good to stop, or go back, or turn here, or wait, maybe go back to that one because it was better. You have no idea how good you have it. I'm telling you.
Now, when you look at her, Mrs. Broderick's functioning, did you see anything about her that was psychotic or any problems she had?
No, I did not see any symptoms of psychosis in my evaluation or in the history that I was able to obtain.
Okay. Were any of the other doctors, when they were looking at her, for instance, Dr. Nelson, did he feel that she knew, that she was, at least knew what she was doing, was sane?
Dr. Nelson made the statement that she was not psychotic, that she was sane.
Okay. And that when she committed acts, she knows what she's doing in the sense of what sanity is.
That's correct.
And you didn't find any diagnosis that would fit that are insanity diagnoses.
That's correct. No one that I know of who has seen her and diagnosed her has diagnosed her as suffering from what we consider a psychosis or being divorced from reality and having what's considered a thought disorder.
Okay. Now, were there times where you were able to see Elizabeth Broderick where she was responding on an upward trend from her mental condition, where people would see her and she would be doing well?
Yes.
And can you give us some examples of that?
In my dealing with her, there were times that she was doing better than in other times. She was not always obviously depressed when I saw her. I also saw that in the materials that I relied upon in terms of what other people testified.
Doctor, I think if we're going into a therapeutic milieu here, it's unrelated to any evaluation she's in the forensic capacity.
Oh, sustained.
You reviewed the transcripts of the last trial, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Was there a time in 1989 that in the summer where it appeared that she was doing better than she had been?
Yes.
Okay. And is that inconsistent with your diagnosis?
No, it's not inconsistent.
And why is that?
Because a number of things. People will have periods that they are doing better even when they are suffering from a depression. And also, during the summer, she had her children with her, which was one of the big causes of her depression. And she had her children with her so that you would expect that she would be doing better in the summer of 1989.
Prior to the trial in 1989 and 1988 and 89, did she talk to you about whether she was hopeful of getting her children?
Yes.
Yeah, she never calls her.
Overruled. You can answer that just yes or no.
Yes.
And would you expect her, when she's in that position of hope, to be doing better or worse?
Of course, she would do better if she were feeling a sense of hope.
I have no further questions, John.
Cross examine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Francesca.
Let's do this.
Now, it's correct that you didn't see the defendant until well over a half a year after she killed Annalena Broderick. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And you had no contact with her whatsoever before that time.
That's correct.
And everything that you're talking about is happening before, what was it, May of 1990 that you saw her? First time?
That's correct.
You're getting this from other sources.
That's correct.
Now, you diagnosed her as having a major depressive episode on axis 1 as an acute problem.
That's right.
And that means that at the time that you saw her, your impression was that she was depressed at that point.
Well, it means that, but it means more than that.
Well, acute means the here and now, right? The present status of the person that you're evaluating. Is that correct?
No, that's misleading, actually.
Okay. What does it mean?
It means any condition that is not diagnosed on axis 2 is diagnosed on axis 1. So that anything but a personality disorder or a learning disorder would be diagnosed on axis 1. Now, that doesn't mean that it's just short-lived. That means that by definition, that's what we call acute problems.
But okay, to me, acute means now that this is happening presently. Would that be fair to say?
No,
Okay.
that would be misleading.
Okay. The last time you testified, did you diagnose the defendant as having recurrent major depression?
Yes,
You did do that?
yes.
Do you have a transcript of it? Well, that's okay. And she was in jail when you saw her for the first time,
That's correct.
in custody awaiting trial on a double murder charge.
That's correct.
Would it be fair to say that situation itself could cause what you've termed major depression?
It certainly is a stressor, and that contributed to her continuing to be depressed, yes.
Could it, in and of itself, though, cause major depression in a lot of people?
Well, I think it could cause major depression in a person, yes.
And major depression is not all that uncommon, is it, doctor?
Well, it would depend upon your frame of reference of what you're talking about, all that uncommon. It's not usual in the general population. No, it's not common.
You recognize the DSM-3R, right?
Yes,
We all agree this is the standard, the Bible actually for mental health professionals in terms of a common ground on which to explain mental status, psychological problems, that sort of thing.
no, that's not true.
That's not true?
That's not true.
Isn't this the one document that everybody relies on in explaining somebody's mental situation or psychological situation?
No, the word that I'm taking exception to that you're using is explain. That doesn't really explain anything.
Describe. Would that be better?
What it does is lists symptoms, and as much as possible, making those symptoms behavioral, so that when I'm talking about depression, I'm talking about the same thing that you're talking about when you're talking
I
about
agree.
depression.
And the reason it's so thick, though, is that because there are descriptions of those various mental situations in here. Isn't that correct?
There are descriptions of the symptoms. That's correct.
Okay. Wouldn't that be a description of, let's say, a personality disorder that would be described in the DSM-3R?
In other words, I think that it's important to know that if you only know the DSM-3 and you are only trying to diagnose out of that and not out of the vast amount of literature and research that has been done on these different disorders, that you make tremendous mistakes.
But you agree that the DSM-3R contains the as you say, the symptoms for the various mental diagnoses. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And isn't it true that in the DSM-3 they say that in there that up to 26% of the adult female population has had a major depression at one time or another?
I think that is accurate, yes.
And in fact, let's say if we take a moment in time right now, according to the DSM-3R here, up to 9.3% of the adult female population is right now majorly depressed.
Say that again?
The DSM-3 says that at any one time, if you take a population of women in America, up to 9.3% of them currently are suffering major depression.
Of one type or another, yes.
Now, you had your colleague Meredith Freeman test for depression, didn't you?
No, I did not have her do that. She did that on her own. Did not have anything to do with me.
you share office space, or you're in some sort of association together?
We share office space.
Does she often do your testing for you?
No, never.
She doesn't?
No.
Okay. So it was just coincidence that she did the testing then?
It wasn't, well, I guess it would be considered coincidence, yes. She did the testing prior to my seeing Mrs. Broderick.
Okay. And that was done on April of 1990.
That's correct.
And also a Milan test was done at that time, right?
That's correct.
Now, the MMPI, the test that you talked about before, showed a certain level of depression, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Approximately 68%. Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate.
Just so we know, we're talking about the same test, doctor. I'm talking about the test that was done on April 23rd, 1990. Is that the test you're talking about?
Yes, that's correct.
Didn't that show a depression scale of 68%?
No, that's incorrect and very misleading.
Let me show you what I've got here. We can hopefully straighten me out.
Showing her Dr. Friedman's test results?
Yes, yeah, for the record, I don't think we need to mark it because the council wants to.
No, I just want Mr. Early to know what you're showing.
Okay,
Yes, I have the same thing I'm looking at.
okay.
That's not a percent.
It's a T-score?
That's a T-score.
Okay. Is that like a percentile?
No, it's not a percentile.
It's just a level or a range?
What that means that it is 2 standard deviations above the mean and on this test, the MMPI-2.
That's not the highest level of depression, is it, doctor?
Well, that the MMPI cannot be used like that. In other words, you can have on this profile that you showed me, you can have a greater spike on scale 2, which is one of the scales that would measure depression. But you then cannot say that this person only has 68% depression, whereas somebody else will have 100%.
No, I'm
depression.
sorry. No, I agree with you. It's not a percentage in that way. If I said percentage, I didn't. You're correct. I'm talking about in terms of a scale. 68% is not extremely high area of depression when we talk about suicide and people who are incapacitated by depression. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. Anything above this line right here, and you can see that her scale 2 is above that line, is considered significant and important to look at and major, and you certainly would have to ask about problems with suicide ideation when you have a clear depression like that.
Okay. Let me show you John Graham's text on the MMPI too. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And doesn't that say that you've got to be up over 76% or higher to have preoccupation with death or suicide?
No, and that's not what that means at all.
That's what it says, though, isn't it?
No, it says interpretive possibilities. So what this is a summary of things to look for at different ranges of scale 2. And as you can see that it says that anything over 66 is considered high and anything over 76 is considered very high.
Oh, I agree, but
But that wouldn't, from that, you would never ever conclude that because their T-score on depression is 68, that you would not be concerned, nor should you question about suicide.
okay. But in terms of this particular scale here, it talks of being preoccupied with death and suicide at a rate of 76 or higher, right?
What he's saying that you would have the hypothesis that the person was preoccupied with death and suicide if they had a T-score of 76.
And
Yes.
there's no mention of suicide and the range in which the defendant was. Is that correct?
No, he doesn't mention it there.
In fact, you say that the defendant had a high rate of depression. Actually, it was almost down towards the moderate scale, wasn't it?
No, anything over a T-score of 65 is considered high.
Right.
And that's 2 standard deviations above the mean, and that's significant.
Right. But what I'm saying here is that the high goes from 66 to 75, and the defendant was at 68, right?
That's
So
correct.
that would be the low end of that, right?
That's correct.
Now, the MMPI that was taken before the defendant was put into custody was back in 1987, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that showed a depression rate of, I don't want to say percentage now because I'll get in trouble, but shows a scale of 67%, is that right?
A T-score of 67.
Right. That's not clinically significant, is it?
It is significant. It's not 2 standard deviations above the mean.
Well, according to the,
Because what you're doing is you're mixing 2 different tests.
I understand that.
Okay,
And they've adjusted the scales from the MMPI 1 to the MMPI 2, haven't they?
that's correct.
But aren't we together on this, that if you have a T-score of under 70 for depression in the MMPI 1, that's not considered clinically significant depression?
No, that again is very misleading. Is still something that you would be looking for and considering as significant, but it doesn't have the same significance that a scale over T-score of 70 would have. That would have even greater significance. That would be more evidence that this person was suffering from a severe depression. But you don't just interpret the T-scores that are over 70. In other words, when you have a secondary elevation like she does,
No, I'm sorry, I think you answered the
do you
question.
understand that?
Yeah. You would have to admit, though, the defendant's depression levels significantly lower before she was put into jail on these murder charges. Wasn't that the case,
Not significantly lower now.
according to you?
That's correct.
Okay. And other people might differ with their interpretations. Wouldn't that be fair?
That is fair.
Okay. Now, you said that you paid a fair amount of deference to mental health professionals who had seen the defendant during the times before she killed Betty Broderick. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you remember Dr. DeVos, you, I think, looked over his materials.
Yes.
And Dr. DeVos was seen by the defendant 4 times, sometime in January, or strike that, in July of '89 at the request of the defendant's attorney.
Yes.
And he made no DSM diagnosis, did he? In terms of depression, according to his deposition that was taken in October of '89.
That he did not diagnose her. That's correct. He never made a diagnosis.
In fact, he found her psychologically sound 1 month before the killings in his deposition, didn't he, in October of 1989?
Your Honor, I've checked, that states the evidence gross.
I don't have a transcript of the deposition.
Sustain, just rephrase the question, Mr. Burkholm.
Did you read the deposition of Dr. DeVos?
Yes, it did.
Did he in that deposition say that he found the defendant psychologically sound on page 24?
I don't remember the page, but I remember that he contradicted himself. At one place, he said that she was psychologically sound, and another place, he said that she had emotional problems.
But he didn't diagnose her as clinically depressed, though, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Dr. Nelson, he saw the defendant around 20 times between February of 1987 and July of 1989. Do you recall looking at his materials?
Yes,
And this was the defendant's own psychiatrist.
that's
Isn't that
correct.
And didn't he state during the divorce trial, page 715, that the MMPI that he had administered in 1987 showed no evidence of serious psychopathology?
Yes, he did state that.
And he also stated that although the MMPI showed that she might be somewhat depressed, she was still, quote, a high energy person, should be a powerful player. He said that at page 715 in the divorce trial.
Yes,
In fact, he found that the defendant's depression was only in the 50th percentile. It was average.
well, again, he was speaking about the MMPI that he had administered, the one that you talked about. And he's a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. And when I looked at his data, that did not, he misinterpreted the MMPI.
So you think he was wrong?
So he did the same thing that you did in terms of saying this was a percentile.
So you put me in the same ballpark with a psychiatrist. I'm flattered. But didn't he also say, though, on that same page, that the defendant was not depressed to the point where she was inactive or in any way disabled by it?
Yes, he did.
And then he also say that the defendant is not mentally ill. She is perfectly rational. If she murdered Mr. Broderick, as she has threatened to do so, she could never be called incompetent. And,
Sustain, just form a question, just ask him, did he say this?
well, did you read this one? Did you read that particular quote? That must have been of some interest to you, I assume, when you did your analysis.
Yes, I read that.
And let me finish it up.
Objection is hearsay.
Well, no, it's not hearsay. Go ahead. Ask her how she interpreted it, how she explained it.
Well, I'd like to get the rest of the quote out so we know what we're talking about.
Go ahead.
She could never be called incompetent in terms that she was psychotic or mentally ill. This lady knows what she is doing. She is very bright, very determined to get her share of the assets and to get her way. Did you consider that?
Yes, I considered that.
And in Dr. Nelson's deposition taken a month before the killings, he also made no DSM-3 diagnosis of the defendant being clinically depressed. Is that correct?
I don't remember that. I would need to review that material.
The deposition at page 7.
I don't have a deposition with me. Maybe you can show me yours. Because I know he has diagnosed her in his files. And so that surprised me.
Okay, well, maybe we can do that at the break.
All right.
Did you read the letter that the defendant sent to Dr. Dess in September of 1988?
I think so.
Dr. Dess was a court-appointed expert to look at the child custody issue as part of the divorce.
Yes.
And did you consider this particular quote in the defendant's own handwriting? Mr. Broderick did not become what he is because he was married to a whiny weakling of a wife. He knew what I could do for him. He knew I was a better, stronger person than he. Did you consider that?
Certainly, I consider that.
Mrs. Broderick had a lot of interest, didn't she, that she testified to at the divorce trial in January of 1989?
Yes.
She was interested in photography, the stock market, thought about possibly going into law, maybe going back to some sort of educational capacity, other than teaching in the classrooms. Is that accurate?
She has a lot of interest, yes.
Now, in the 6 months before she killed Anna Linda, she had the children for extended periods of time, right?
Yes, especially the summer before.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
And she was fairly active. She took a lot of trips. She went to Canada and San Francisco and Acapulco, places like that.
that's correct.
And she went to New York 2 or 3 times, to New Orleans, to Hawaii, to some of these trips with her boyfriend, Brad Wright.
I know that she took some trips with him, yes.
And she was active in buying a new condominium. She was decorating it. She'd hired a decorator there, making decisions.
The summer prior to the killing, 1989,
Yes.
talking about? Yes,
And she was taking steps to sell her house in Calle de Cielo.
that's correct.
She was attending various public meetings and doing some public speaking.
You mean the Halls meeting?
Yes.
Yes,
And the gender bias hearings, that sort of thing.
yes.
And she actually back from sometime later in 1985, she had a very close relationship with Brad Wright, didn't she? And that continued up until the time of the killings.
Yeah, that's correct. We had a very close friendship.
In fact, she had successfully run an independent household for 4.5 years prior to the killings.
I don't know that that's true. I think that it would depend upon your definition of successful.
Well, she was able to, she had a house of her own, didn't she?
Yes, she
And she was
lived
able-
by herself alone.
She was able to maintain the household. She didn't have to have, she could live on her own, I take it.
I think that it was not successful. I think that she had great difficulty. I think that she really struggled during that period of time. And so that I would not use the word successful.
She lived on her own.
She lived on her own.
Okay.
That's correct.
Didn't need anybody to take care of her.
That's correct.
And on the weekend of the homicides, she took her boys, she took them shopping, took them to haircuts,
That's
to a
correct.
football game, soccer game,
That's correct.
took pictures, that sort of thing.
Yes,
She went to Mary Dietz on Saturday and talked about her finances.
that's correct.
And that evening, Saturday night, she invited Brad Wright over, cooked him a dinner.
Yes,
And you've heard Mr. Wright, or maybe you haven't, but from reviewing the discovery, you know that Mr. Wright said that they had an uneventful, nothing unusual about it evening, that evening.
I know that he said that, yes.
And that he noted nothing unusual about the defendant's demeanor that day or that evening.
I didn't, you would have to show me. I don't remember that, but I don't remember. I remember him saying that it was an uneventful event.
And that the defendant went to sleep at a usual time between 9 and 10 o'clock that night.
Yes,
And that in fact, nothing unusual was noted by Mr. Wright about the defendant for the last 3 or 4 weeks before she shot Dan and Linda. Isn't that correct?
Unusual in terms of what?
Out of the ordinary for the defendant.
In comparison to what?
In comparison to the way she normally was. There was nothing, in other words, out of the ordinary in terms of the way the defendant normally acted. It took place between the 3 or 4 weeks prior to the defendant's killing these 2 people.
Okay, I think that the sense that I got, however, was that he saw her as somebody who did struggle with depression and had struggled with depression for as long as he had known her. And so that the impression that I got that when he was talking about unusual, he wasn't talking about somebody who didn't have problems.
Well, if he didn't testify that way, he just said there was nothing unusual about her when he testified a few days ago.
Your Honor, objections already been
Sustained.
Did you hear Mr. Wright testify maybe a week and a half ago?
No, but I read the transcript from the first hearing.
Mhm.
And I guess what I'm referring to is that, he did describe her as having problems with depression, and he indicated that she would try to mask her depression.
But if he testified in this trial that there was nothing unusual about her in the 3 to 4 weeks before the killings, would you consider that in making your opinion here?
I can, if he said that, I can agree that he said that.
Did you know that, did you take this into account that PJ Hathaway saw the defendant the Saturday before she killed these people and said that, in his words, she was happy-go-lucky?
Yes, I read that.
And that when she changed, it was because she was angry about the divorce, that sort of thing.
That's correct. That she appeared happy-go-lucky at one moment and angry at another, as I recall his saying in the first trial.
But he never testified that she appeared depressed.
Not to him, right?
Mr. Burkhoff, might this be a good time to take the afternoon recess?
Sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our afternoon recess. This time we'll be in recess until 5 minutes after 3. Please remember the admonition. May resume, Mr. Burkhoff.
Dr. DiFrancesca, when you read the discovery, I assume you read the witness interview reports,
Yes, I did.
and that would have been included in that would have been the investigator's report of Brad Wright, generated from the conversation they had with him.
Yes.
Do you remember Brad talking about that?
I have an objection to this.
Sustained.
Now let me show you this and see if you.
Show it to her, have her read it to herself, and ask her a question if you want.
For the record, Your Honor, I'm showing a 2-page document, investigator's report, William L. Green of Brad Wright, dated February 26, 1990. The witness, look at the last paragraph, the second page. Do you remember?
Wait,
Oh, fine. No, I have an objection. Your side.
Well, did you consider it? Ask her that.
Always those yes, I mean, I think she already testified she did consider it.
Ask her again. Just
Did you consider that
objection.
before?
Yes, I did.
And that last paragraph states that Brad described Betty as being very active and having lots of friends. She did not sulk about her problems, did not seem depressed over the summer or in the months preceding November 5th, 1989. Did you
Yes.
consider that?
Yes, I did. But I also considered his statements in the first trial, where he indicated that she was, and I think it sounds to me there like he's alluding to that, where he said that she did not give in to her depression. She would mask it. I don't know if mask was his words, but that's how I interpreted what he was saying, was that she would put her depression aside and carry on and be brave.
That's the way he testified at the first trial?
That's my recollection of what I read of the transcript. Yes.
And that would have been well over a half year after he made this statement to the investigators. Is that correct?
Argumentative, sustained.
Well, did you see anything here that says that she was masking her depression?
Just that she did not let her problems sulk about her problems, which,
That she
I
did
think
not
is
seem
what he
depressed?
and then he said she did not seem depressed.
And you think that shows that she's masking?
I don't think that's inconsistent with what I'm talking about with somebody who masks their depression.
You did review the jail records that were generated by the defendant after she was jailed for these killings.
Yes.
And did you review Dr. Robinson's notes on November 6th in that record?
May I refresh my
Certainly.
memory?
Calling particular attention to November 6th, the day after the shootings.
And so it's Dr. Robinson's, not Louise Hines' notes, correct? On that
Well, I'll ask
day?
you about Ms. Hines in a second, but Dr. Robinson, the psychiatrist,
Yes, I've got them.
he examined the defendant the day after the shootings,
Yes.
and he states that the patient presents seemingly emotionally fresh and physically rested.
Could you show me where you were reading? I found it here.
That's the way he described her.
Yes.
And when you talked about Dr. Robinson finding some sort of hysterical shock, you don't know whether or not that was his ultimate diagnosis, do you? The label de France that you testified to.
I think if I remember correctly, he did not make an ultimate diagnosis because the interview was interrupted.
Right, but he had the opportunity to observe her for a period of 2 months following that time, just because he was in the same location she was. Would you defer to his, if he came and testified, would you defer to his diagnosis on that, whatever it might be? Since he actually saw her at that time.
And defer to his diagnosis regarding what?
Whether or not the defendant was suffering from hysterical shock.
Yes, I would defer to his and Louise Hines' diagnosis.
Okay.
The people who saw her right then.
In fact, turning to Ms. Hines, a week after the shootings on November 13th, Ms. Hines, does she not, talks about that Ms. Broderick appeared cheerful, pleasant, spoke willingly with me
This was what date?
on November 13th.
Yes.
And indeed, it was only about a month after that you see in those jail records that there's any indication of depression. Isn't that correct? A month after the homicides.
No, I don't think that that's correct.
You disagree with that?
Yes, I disagree with that.
Now, you consider the 1986 Milan test that was administered to the defendant when she was placed in a 72-hour hold after ramming her car into Dan's front doors.
Yes, I did consider it.
And turn your attention to page 3 of that Milan. The third paragraph where it states,
Wait a minute, you're ahead of me.
okay,
I have to say that I have a real question about reading that narrative as if it is a finding, because it is not a finding. In fact, that's, in my estimation, a very unethical thing to do, to consider it a finding.
it's unethical for me to do.
Well, I think it needs the caveat that comes with it in order to read it, because it's not a finding. And I think that it can be very misleading, especially if that's not understood.
Well, aren't these computer printouts generated every time there's a Milan administered? Don't they come out as an explanation for what the graphs show?
No, I think that's, I mean, that there is a computer generated narrative that comes if you feed the data in from the Milan, but that narrative are simply hypotheses and things to look for in a person. They are not findings, and they should not be used as a report or as definitive.
I understand that, but it's something that the professionals in the field would look at and consider when they would draw up a psychological profile of the defendant, considering that she had taken this Milan test and it was computer scored and there was a descriptive analysis that came out from it. Wouldn't they consider that?
You certainly would consider it
Okay.
and read it.
That's all I'm asking you.
Mhm.
Doesn't it state that this woman has been typified by social undependability and a tendency to exploitation, capriciousness, and irresponsible behavior, a glib social style, the persistent seeking of excitement, and frequent seductive and self-dramatizing behavior. Interpersonal relationships are characteristically shallow or tense, and she appears indifferent to the welfare of others. Praise and approval are actively solicited by immature and histrionic demands for attention. She is easily excited and quickly bored. Although willing to expend effort to achieve something for herself, she is difficult and resistant about carrying out what others ask of her. Intolerance of inactivity and an inability to delay gratification are associated with her impulsiveness, short-sighted hedonism, and her minimal regard for the consequences of her behavior, which may lead to difficulties with the legal authorities. Did you consider that?
Yes, I certainly did.
It's your testimony the defendant was not psychotic, at least at any time when you examined her from May until November of 1990. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, you saw nothing in any of the notes of any of the previous mental health professionals that examined the defendant that indicated that she was in any way psychotic. Isn't that also fair to say?
That's correct.
So she was oriented as a time and place and person.
Yes.
She wasn't hearing voices,
No voice.
wasn't seeing things that weren't there,
That's correct.
had no delusions of grandeur or persecution, people out to get her, that sort of thing.
There was no evidence that she was delusional.
And you personally diagnosed the defendant as being borderline
Yes, I did.
and being histrionic
Yes,
and having narcissistic features.
that's correct.
Now, it's correct that the DSM-3R does I don't want to get into it, describe or give symptoms for borderline personalities.
That's correct.
And it describes them as following that involves interpersonal relationships for the borderline are usually unstable and intense, may be characterized by alternation of the extremes of over idealization and devaluation. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
And that these people often have inappropriately intense anger with frequent displays of temper. Would you agree with that?
yes,
Recurrent suicidal threats, gestures. This behavior may serve to manipulate others.
yes,
Frequently accompanied by narcissistic and histrionic features.
yes,
And indeed, you did find those as well with the defendant, didn't you?
that's correct.
Is it correct to say that the borderlines are difficult people to get along with?
Not necessarily.
They can act socially appropriately
Yes, they can.
over long periods of time?
Well, it would, to understand and to be able to answer that, you have to understand that there are degrees also within the diagnosis of a borderline personality disorder, so that it is a continuum, so that you will see characteristics of borderline pathology where a person is not able to function very well at all. And indeed, it's not unusual to have episodes where somebody will need to be hospitalized, and then you will see someone functioning at a better level.
Nobody ever thought that Mrs. Broderick should be hospitalized at any time, did they?
Well, she was hospitalized.
Well, when she ran her car into the door, and then she was actually allowed after a day or so to leave, and she didn't want to leave. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, but they hospitalized her because they were concerned that she was suicidal.
Right.
That was one of the reasons.
And after she had been there for a day or so, they decided she was not suicidal. Isn't
That's
that correct? And they wanted her to go home, didn't they?
No, they didn't necessarily want her to go home. She would not, the way I interpreted that was that they allowed her to stay. They were glad that she stayed. They didn't want to kick her out, but they did not feel that they had enough to hold her against her will.
Didn't they present her with a discharge form so that she could leave, and she refused to sign it?
Right.
So it was her choice.
It was her choice to stay at that point, yes.
And besides being suicidal, she was admitted because she was homicidal. Is that correct?
They were concerned about that, yes.
And it turned out at least that the suicidal part of it didn't really pose a real threat. Is that at least in their estimation at that time?
I don't know that's true. I mean, they kept her in the hospital for a while and observed her, and I don't know that they felt that she was never suicidal. They certainly decided that after a period of time, she was no longer either a suicide threat or a homicide threat.
Well, they decided one of
You
those.
also diagnosed her as
too
being
late.
histrionic,
Yes,
and there the DSM-3 talks about histrionics have a pervasive pattern of excessive emotionality and attention seeking,
yes,
and their behavior is overly reactive and intensely expressed. Minor stimuli give rise to emotional excitability. Emotions are often expressed with inappropriate exaggeration. The person may appear much more sad, angry, or delighted than would seem to be warranted. Is that accurate?
that's correct.
They tend to be very self-centered with little or no tolerance for the frustration of delayed gratification. Their actions are directed to obtaining immediate satisfaction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the tendency is, yes,
They are lively and dramatic and are always drawing attention to themselves.
yes,
And they are prone to exaggeration in their personal relations and interpersonal relations, and often act out the role such as that of the victim.
yes.
Are these also people that may be somewhat, say, difficult people to get along with?
Didn't you miss one?
Well, maybe I did. Tell me what it is if I did.
I'm talking about the speech and being very global and impressionistic.
Yeah, I don't think I got everything here, but if I
Okay.
did, that's part of it too, global and impressionistic?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think that it's also important to note that not everyone who has a diagnosis of a histrionic personality disorder will have every one of those characteristics. And that the level varies from person to person.
It's fair to say, though, that one of the hallmarks of being histrionic is that you tend to exaggerate. Is that correct?
That's true.
And you manipulate.
There can be manipulation. That's not necessarily true.
It's a frequent feature, though, isn't it?
The manipulation is not in the sense of a sociopathic type of manipulation, though. It's in a sense of feeling very powerless and unable to solve problems, and so that you manipulate people to help you to solve problems.
But you're still manipulating. If we put a lot of people like you on the stand, most of them would say most histrionics manipulate other people through exaggeration. Is that correct?
Well, I think that most mental health people would qualify that to show that it's similar, that it's very dissimilar to the type of manipulation that I think you would think of as somebody who uses other people in a sociopathic type of way, like a con artist who manipulates. And it's not that type of manipulation at all. It's needing other people to help a histrionic person to solve problems. And so
Right.
therefore you tend to be very acquiescing and people pleasing so that people will help you. That type of manipulation.
Right, and that's because the histrionic is very self-centered, cares more about himself or herself than they do about other people. Is that correct?
No, that's also a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation. They are self-centered, and the reason why they're self-centered is because their sense of identity is based on relationships and how they are relating to people, so that if they're not getting attention, they're feeling very insecure and empty. So that's the danger of trying to diagnose somebody just from the DSM-3 that I spoke of earlier.
Now, you say that people like antisocials have a different sort of manipulation. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
But the defendant was diagnosed as antisocial at Claremont Hospital, wasn't she?
She had, that was one of the diagnoses that were suggested, was borderline personality disorder.
And also an antisocial personality disorder. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure, and I don't think that was the diagnosis of Dr. Garrett Levinson.
Well, I'll keep going, but maybe we can find that and show it to you. Now, you also diagnosed her as being narcissistic.
No, having narcissistic features.
Right, features. Other people have diagnosed her as being narcissistic, haven't they?
Dr. Goldspan diagnosed her as narcissistic personality disorder.
And Dr. Goldsman never diagnosed her as having major depression, did he?
He indicated that she had depression. I think he said, of course, she's been depressed and had depression, and indicated that it was rage turned inward.
But he didn't see the depression that you saw. He didn't diagnose her as a DSM-3 diagnosis of major depression, did he?
He didn't give her a DSM-3 diagnosis. He never, in his testimony, talked about Axis 1 or Axis 2 diagnoses. He just described her. From my reading of his transcript, he described her as narcissistic, but he'd never dealt with an Axis 1 diagnosis at all, except that when asked, he agreed that she was depressed.
Right, but he did not say she has a major depression disorder such as you did.
That's correct.
Okay. And as to narcissism here, isn't it true that the DSM-3R says that Narcissists have a pattern of grandiosity, hypersensitivity to the evaluation of others, and a lack of empathy.
Yes.
And they tend to exaggerate their accomplishments and talents, and they expect to be noticed as special, even without appropriate achievement, and that they often feel that because of their specialness, their problems are unique.
Yes.
And in their interpersonal relationships, they're invariably disturbed. The relationships are disturbed. There's a lack of empathy and an inability to recognize and experience how others feel. That's common with them.
Yes.
In fact, in your prior testimony in the last trial, didn't you say that the defendant's lack of empathy for others, including her children, was a characteristic of her narcissistic personality trait that you described?
I don't remember saying that.
I think counsel may have a different paginated transcript, so I'll show it to him.
So could you repeat your question for me, please?
So it isn't true that the last time you testified, you said that, well, I think that in understanding Mrs. Broderick, you also have to come to grips with the lack of empathy that she showed, and at least in her behavior after the separation. For example, the lack of empathy for her children and failure of empathy is something that is considered a symptom of narcissism. You also see a fair degree of self-focus, which is also a symptom of narcissism. Would you still hold with that diagnosis of the defendant?
That description of
Yes.
having problems with empathy, yes. At that point in her functioning, very much so.
Another thing under the DSM-3R is that narcissists have a sense of entitlement, an unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment. That's usually present, isn't that correct?
Yes. It's often present.
In other words, that means that the people who have narcissistic tendencies are self-centered and they put their needs before the needs of others. Would that be fair to say?
No, I think that that's misleading. I think that a person who has narcissistic tendencies will have tendencies to do one or more of those things as described. A person who has a diagnosis of a narcissistic personality disorder, of course, will have more of a tendency to do that. But the way you've described it as a person with narcissistic tendencies will not necessarily have each one of those features.
But you at least found that in the defendant's behavior, didn't you?
Which? The putting a
That she
tendency.
was self-centered and put her needs ahead of those of other people.
I think that sometimes that she did, and sometimes she did the exact opposite of that. So that certainly isn't something that was abiding and that would describe an enduring trait of Elizabeth Broderick.
Also, the DSM-3 talks about interpersonal exploitativeness as a characteristic of them, in which others are taken advantage of in order to achieve one's ends or for self-aggrandizement. Friendships are often made only after the person considers how he or she can profit from them. In romantic relationships, the partner is often treated as an object to be used to bolster the person's self-esteem. Is that also a fair assessment of a narcissist?
I think that that is often what you see in a narcissist. Yes.
Now, when you say that one of the symptoms of depression might be suicide attempts, you don't have to be depressed to commit suicide, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
In fact, a lot of people make attempts at suicide that are not bona fide, isn't that correct? Called suicidal gestures.
I think I described that this morning when I was testifying, that generally, when you have somebody who has made a suicide gesture, you can't assume that they are not suicidal. As a matter of fact, you could better assume that they are suicidal.
But I guess the question I was asking was, don't a lot of people affect an attempt at suicide who aren't genuine in their attempt, that they want to get some attention?
Again, that would not be a suicide gesture, if that's what you're talking about. A suicide gesture means that you're doing something because part of you is thinking that you want to die.
It's never used as a manipulative technique.
Well, part of the unconscious and maybe even conscious rationale for some suicide gestures would be as a cry for help. And sometimes a cry for help is what you're asking for is somebody to listen to you and to understand the problems and to pay attention to it. And if that's considered manipulation, then yes, it would be a manipulation.
Well, didn't we just talk about a quote for borderlines, and you diagnosed the defendant as being borderline, where the quote was under the DSM-3, recurrent suicidal threats, gestures, this behavior may serve to manipulate others.
Correct. But in the way that I just described, manipulate others.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that when the defendant was put in Las Colinas and seen by Dr. Robinson, that she denied ever being suicidal?
Yeah, I think she did.
And that in 1986, when she was admitted to Claremont, Dr. Levinson said that suicide potential for the defendant was unlikely, but she could kill herself as a manipulative acting out gesture.
Yes.
Now, you've talked about anger and suicidal threats and strong reaction to loss. These are all attributes of depression, according to your testimony.
I'm sorry, I missed part of
Anger,
that.
suicidal threats, strong reactions to loss. These are suicide. These are depression characteristics.
Yes,
Aren't they also borderline characteristics as well?
yes.
Who was it that you said you first got involved as a therapist rather than an evaluator of the defendant?
That's correct.
Who was it that got you involved?
Mr. Early?
The defense attorney did?
Yes.
Oh. Now, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. You're saying that people, in this case, the defendant was a borderline, she was histrionic and she had narcissistic tendencies, but she only came by these later in life. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that from what I have been able to glean from the people who knew her prior to 1983 and who describe her, you do not see evidence of somebody who was not functioning. You see a very functional person. In reading the marriage encounter, you see a very functioning person, her statements. And so it appears that these characteristics were not there prior to 1983.
So you're talking about, based on what the defendant wrote in that book of the marriage encounter, and whatever witnesses were interviewed about the defendant's life before 1983, you don't think she was a personality disorder before that time, was not histrionic or borderline or narcissistic?
What I said was that the manifestations of these personality disorders were not apparent before 1983 through the eyes of the people who knew her, who described her as tremendously well-functional. And so that you have to come to grips with that in one way or another.
But then again, you're isolating your opinion to the data that you have. However many people the defense talked to or wherever the information came from. You're limited in looking at that. You don't really know what happened with the defendant before 1983, do you?
That's correct, but it's a wide range of people, including school teachers that dealt with her regarding her children, friends who described her as very well functioning. At least one trained observer, Dr. Jacobson, who had some interaction with her in 1980 when she went with her daughter Lee to see Dr. Jacobson, also describes her as a very well-functioning person.
Did you talk to did you talk to the daughters and talk to them about what went on in the marriage before 1983?
Thank you, Gabby, for the super sticker. It's a mustache. StreamYard doesn't show that. I haven't finished. She's like, a mustache, you a question. And then she sent another super sticker, $3 super sticker, thank you. Because she wants me to go like this, except she doesn't want me to go like that. She wants me to mess it up like I did one time and accidentally did the shocker. It was shocking, quite shocking. But thanks, Gabby. I appreciate it. so much. All right. Why does this just feel like it's taking forever? Because it is.
No, but
Okay, well, that's all right, that's all right.
but I certainly read their statements.
Okay, and you saw nothing there to show any
Show
lack of function on her part before the marriage, or before 1983.
No, don't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you don't see the problems that would lead to a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder. You certainly see, and I am aware that there were problems and unhappiness much before 1983. And Mrs. Broderick talks about the fact that there was unhappiness in her life and in her marriage before 1983. She talked to me about that.
And she's talked to a lot of other people and said that her marriage was beautiful and wonderful before 1983. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And that would be an inconsistency, wouldn't it?
That is inconsistent. Yeah, but
Did you-
again, I'm sorry.
I think you answered the question.
Uh,
You did talk to the defendant about the killings themselves, right?
Yes, as I described earlier.
And the defendant did tell you some of what she did when she went into that room, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She stated that when I opened the door to this room, to the bedroom, basically, I never saw them. Just opened the door, and I wasn't even in the room. Linda moved, and I shot. Is that what the defendant told you?
As best that I can remember it, yes. Again, recalling, as I testified earlier, that I was not writing it, not able to write it word for word.
And you didn't ask her to stop and write it down more clearly?
That's correct. I did not.
You remember saying, I remember pulling the trigger once?
Do I remember her saying that?
Well, she did say that to you, that according to your notes, didn't she?
I don't know. That's not in a quote, but that's what I wrote down is what I felt I heard.
You did write down the words, I remember pulling the trigger once, didn't you?
That's correct.
And you did write down the words, I never saw them, just opened the door, I wasn't even in the room, Linda moved, and I shot. Those are your words exactly, aren't they?
Those are my words, yes.
Okay. And you also wrote down that went in the room to go out the other door, Dan's on the floor, puts his hands up, okay, you got me. You wrote that?
Yes, I wrote that.
Hit him on the hand because I didn't get him. You wrote that?
Yes.
Pulled out the phone. I left the phone at the top of the stairs. Did you write that?
Yes.
And those are your best recollection. That's your best recollection of what the defendant said. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you skipped a line, but a sentence, but
Pulled out the phone. He was just there and the phone was coming at me and I pulled.
right.
Did I skip anything else?
No, I think that's it. In terms of that paragraph.
And that's what the defendant told you.
As I said before, I was writing very quickly. She was talking very quickly. I was sentences behind her. This is my best effort.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Redirect.
Yes. The, you've worked at the jail before, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Well, what do you mean by working at the
Well, I
jail?
mean, you've been to the jail and visited people that are there, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And when somebody admits to suicide in jail, they're put naked in a cell, aren't they?
yes.
Okay. And there's a reason why inmates at times may not want to tell somebody what they're feeling if they end up being naked in a cell.
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You can answer that.
I've dealt with many people who have ended up in a rubber room naked because they have said something about suicide, and typically it is something that's avoided. In my experience, it's something that's avoided at all costs because it's such a horrible thing to have happen to you. It's cold, you feel terribly exposed, you're alone, and it is a instant rapport breaker when you tell the jail that you think somebody is suicidal because they always go into the rubber room.
And when Ms. Broderick was, from jail notes, admitted to the jail, she was put in this rubber room, wasn't she?
Yes, she was.
And when Dr. Robinson talked about her being fresh and well rested, that's coming out from very next day from the rubber room, isn't it?
Yes.
I take it that when you have somebody who has a hysterical reaction, you're going to see inappropriate affect.
Yes, you typically see inappropriate affect.
The questions were asked you about the Milan reading score, and there was some quotes that were given, asked you by the district attorney. Is there a caveat that in fact they even give with the score?
With the narrative, yes, they give a caveat
And what does the caveat tell you?
that you should not consider this as a report, and that it is hypotheses, and that it needs to be interpreted by a trained clinician.
So, and it even indicates that you shouldn't even read it to the patient, doesn't it? Or the patient's family, because it can be so misleading.
Yes.
At the time when they score, you get a computer score. Anyone who scores high enough on a scale to be considered borderline, they would get the same printout. Is that correct?
That's correct. In other words, this is not tailored to the person specifically, but it's both an empirical test and a theoretically based test. So if you get a certain score, say on narcissism, then it goes into the computer bank. It's only 175 questions on the test. So it goes into the computer bank and it gives out different statements regarding narcissism. And no one person will fit every single one of those statements, and none of those statements will fit everybody who scores high on that scale. And that's why it has to be dealt with very carefully, because it can be very misleading.
Okay. And when you talked about manipulative, you talked about there's sociopathic manipulation, such as a con man that wants somebody to believe something that's not true. There's that kind of manipulation, isn't there?
That's true.
And then there's a manipulation that we have when we want people to feel a certain way.
Well,
Section leading.
Overall.
When you are trying to get attention and have somebody talk to you about problems you are having or how you are feeling, that's kind of like called a manipulation. It's a cry for help. You're trying to get that person's attention and to get them to really listen.
Now, manipulation is, when you have that term, that's part of, manipulation can be part of a healthy personality too, can it not?
You mean, do healthy people ever use manipulation?
Yeah.
Yes, of course they do.
So for instance, when you send somebody flowers, you may be trying to manipulate their feelings.
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled. Can answer that.
Yes,
or no?
that's true. That any one of these characteristics, we all use these different characteristics and all have some of these traits, so that they can be within the normal realm also.
Now, there was some questions asked about how somebody what you viewed to determine, or what you looked at to determine whether these traits were present before 1983.
Correct.
Okay. And you gave some example of those.
Yes.
Okay. When you looked at the marriage encounters where the people were speaking in private to each other and their feelings and their problems in the marriage, did they do that in marriage encounters?
Yes.
Was there anything in Mr. Broderick's marriage encounter that was talking about the person being, that you would see all these tendencies about someone being just self-centered, not giving, all the things that were read?
Objection, the document speaks for itself.
Vague as to your personality you're talking about, Mr. Ray. Talking about Mrs. Broderick's or Mrs. Broderick's?
Well, first of all, Mr. Broderick's.
Irrelevant.
Sustained.
And how about Mrs. Broderick's encounter? Was that somebody who was self-centered, not caring about other people's feelings?
Beyond the scope, number one, it has nothing to do with, she didn't write those words, he did.
Well, she's talking about Mrs. Broderick's now, as I understand the question.
Yes.
Overruled.
Well, no, I mean, her concerns, as she wrote them in the marriage encounter, was for a loving, close family, better communication, mirroring to other people, love and a good marriage, and that that they would grow closer and that they would put wants aside and only talk about the things that they really needed. And they were just very strong values mentioned in there.
And when she talked about the one thing that she wanted materialistically, what was that?
She wanted a sofa so that they could sit together at the end of the day and really be close.
Surely the doctor had a scheduling problem. This is a good time to.
Yes, because it's going to be about 15 minutes, but I'll be able to finish up fairly quickly tomorrow morning.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, witnesses, like all the rest of us, have scheduling concerns, and when they don't know when they're going to testify and how long they're going to be here. So obviously we want to accommodate them. So for that reason, we're going to be recessing a little bit early today because she has another matter, the doctor has another matter at 4:00, just so you know what's going on. We'll be in recess then now until tomorrow morning at 9:00. Please remember the admonition. See you tomorrow at 9. Rick is present. Dr. DiFrancesca is present on the witness stand. You're still under oath from yesterday, ma'am. And ladies and gentlemen, before we start, we had a matter come up unexpectedly this morning that I had to take care of before we resumed proceedings. So I apologize to you for the delay. And had I known we were going to be starting late, I would have excused you to a later point in time, but I didn't know about it till I got here this morning. So hope you understand. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
Doctor, there was some questions about the T-score, the 65 T-score, and correlating that to being the 65 percentile. Were you able to go to the literature to find out how a T-score relates to where a person would be in a percentile?
Which test are we talking about?
Well, vague, just rephrase it, Mr. Early.
Okay. There was a test that was referred to in the T-score of 65. Remember that?
Yes,
And whose test was that?
that was a test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory. And the question was whether a T-score of 65 is the same thing as a percentile of 65. We were talking about her score on the depression scale.
Okay. And do they in fact relate T-scores to percentile if you want that information?
Yes,
And what percentile, if we try to relate a T-score 65 to percentile, what percentile are we talking about?
that's the 95th percentile on the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2.
So that means that when we're talking about a scale of 0 to 100, she would fit at 95.
As far as a percentile, that's the 95th percentile.
You mentioned Dr. Nelson, and you read some questions about reinterpreting, or you answered reinterpret his test scores. Do you remember those?
Yes.
And why was that done, or what did you mean by that?
Well, Dr. Nelson is a psychiatrist who saw Betty Broderick, and he had a psychologist administer a Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, the same MMPI test. And then when Dr. Nelson, the psychiatrist, was then interpreting the results of the MMPI, he was the one that interpreted it as a 65th percentile, and it should have been 65th T-score of 65, percentile of 95.
Okay. There was some questions asked you about the Milan test. Is there a warning that comes with the Milan test?
A caveat,
Ask and answer,
or
Your Honor.
a warning.
Well, sustained.
Well, could you read that caveat?
Ask and answer.
I've had her, she's read the caveat?
I think she's read it.
Before. She read it in my cross-examination.
I don't recall that. She's read it. You can read it. Go ahead and read it again.
All right.
This will work. We're talking about caveat on the MMPI or the
Milan.
Milan.
She read that at length before the jury.
No, I didn't.
I don't recall her reading it, so go ahead.
Your Honor, in other words, she explained it. She testified.
Well, that's different than reading it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Based on theoretical inferences and probabilistic data from actuarial research, the MCMI-2 report cannot be judged definitive. It must be viewed as only one facet of a comprehensive psychological assessment and should be evaluated in conjunction with additional clinical data. For example, current life circumstances, observed behavior, biographic history, interview responses, and information from other tests. To avoid its misconstrual or misuse, the report should be evaluated by mental health clinicians trained in recognizing the strengths and limitations of psychological test data. Given its limited database and pathologic focus, the report should not be shown to patients or their relatives.
And I take it that there was some indications in the report that after the doctors looked at the person's Mrs. Broderick's current life situation, other factors either changed or upgraded her condition.
Objection, that does not accurately state the records.
Overruled. You can answer that.
I think what happened was that the psychiatrist.
Doctor, objection as to the doctor's speculation as to what did or did not happen.
Non-responsive sustained.
Now, there were some questions about Mrs. Broderick's function, how she was functioning. Do you remember those questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Objection, they were not questions, they were facts.
Well,
Your Honor, that's for the jury.
Overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
Is depression all pervasive?
Objection made.
Overruled. You can answer that.
No, depression does not necessarily manifest itself to other people all the time, and a person is at times able to get themselves together, go out and do things, even though they are in a depressed state.
Are there people that you see that are highly functional who can be classified as having major depression, manic depressive?
Certainly, many people who are highly successful have diagnoses of manic depressive disorder, successful people in all walks of life. An example from history is Winston Churchill, who was diagnosed as having manic depressive disorder.
And are there times that you see that people do things to at least alleviate depression or deal with it so that they can present themselves to other people?
Yes.
Okay. Was there anything that you saw in this case as to something that Elizabeth Broderick would do to help deal with the depression at any time of the day?
Objection, asked and answered as goes to this masking concept.
Overruled. You can answer that.
She did a lot of things to try to snap out of the depression, put herself together. She joined organizations. She would go out shopping, spending money. That's something that frequently people do to try to make themselves feel better. Oftentimes, a friend will say, take a trip, pull yourself together. She did that. She tried taking trips. For example, she went to Tahiti, but what happened was she said she was, sitting on the beach and feeling worse than she did at home. And so, as often happens, these are just very superficial remedies. They don't solve the problem. They might work for a little while, but then the person plummets back into a depression, which Mrs. Broderick explained to me would happen with her as well.
Was she doing something on a daily habit in the morning or in the evening to?
Mrs. Broderick talked about the way that she dealt with her depression, or at least what helped her get going was her walks on the beach. She would, in the morning, get up, walk on the beach, get some fresh air. She would feel better, and that would help her be able to face her day better.
There was some questions about, did Mrs. Broderick have talents and interests that you were asked about? Does the fact that she has talents and interests make it so that she would not have any of the disorders you talked about or depression?
No.
Okay. And why is that?
Well, I think it's very clear that Mrs. Broderick has the raw material to, number one, have a self-identity and have purpose and have direction. She's multi-talented. She's very bright. But she doesn't have self-confidence. She will say, I'm the greatest mother, I'm the greatest this, and I'm the greatest that. But typically people who say that don't really believe it, and Mrs. Broderick doesn't believe it. She is not a passive woman, but she's a very emotionally dependent woman. She spent most of her marriage acquiescing to Dan's Broderick's judgment.
Excuse me, Doc, I'll say, she's gone beyond answering the question.
Sustained.
Does a long-term marriage where you're acquiescing to the other person and quieting the voice, does that make it difficult for people to find their own identity?
Objection, answer and answer.
Overruled.
Yes.
And why is that?
because you have the habit of deferring to someone else, you don't develop a sense of confidence in your own opinions and your own judgment. You develop the habit of having to have everything blessed or acknowledged by the other person, so that you might think this is good and this is important, but unless the other person says you're right, this is good and this is important, you don't really believe it. You spend time trying to convince that other person that what you're doing has merit. And when they do agree with you, then you can feel good about yourself.
There was some questions asked about some statements that Elizabeth Broderick would make as to, at one time, the marriage being good, at another time saying the marriage was bad. What would be the reasons for that?
Wow.
Welcome, Ada Raiders. How you guys doing? Thank you, Ada, for the raid. Did you guys get a verdict, or did they go home for the evening? Also, Dottie to Short Nuts, 100%. Sorry, I had an email I had to take care of. So I don't. I know you guys have been hanging in there for a while with your trial. No verdict. Oh, they'll try again tomorrow. What's up, Ronnie? I haven't seen you forever. Well, for those of you that have not joined us before, we are rewatching the Betty Broderick trial from 1991. This is her second trial. This is also the second trial that Court TV ever showed after the Pamela Smart trial. So Betty is on, said trial a lot, trial for unaliving her ex-husband and his new wife, Linda Kolkena. They'd been married for about 6 months. However, he had had an affair with Linda after he had hired her as his paralegal. She was 21. He was in his late 30s, mid to late 30s at the time. They have an affair. He divorces Betty. He's a high-priced, very powerful attorney, and things go very south from there. And Betty ends up breaking into Dan and Linda's home early in the morning to confront them, and ends up unaliving both of them as they slept. And she in her book that she wrote in 2023, she's claiming self-defense. And here, this woman is a doctor that met with Betty around 9 times. She's just listing Betty as a lot of things. So we are in the middle of the defense presenting their case here. And I haven't really followed where the defense is going with their defense yet. But what's up, Tink? How you doing? Good to see you. And I was here Friday. Yes, they had life-size mannequins in the courtroom that had the dowel rods through them to show where the rounds penetrated them. I'm trying to say it YouTube friendly. And there was an arrow there in a bad spot. Puddletown has not forgotten it at all. So we shall continue on with this. Is one of the many defense experts. Oh yes, they're trying to prove that Dan drove her temporarily insane after she drove through the front door of his home. Okay, Flashman, I was super confused. Thank you for clarifying.
You see something similar to that in people just in general. For example, when you have a friendship, and if you talk about that friend, you talk about the good things about the friend. You don't even think about the bad things about the friend. But if that friendship breaks up, Then you start thinking about the bad qualities that other person has, and you start talking about them. Under a stressful condition, like a breakup of a partnership or a lawsuit or any type of stressful condition, the whole dynamic becomes exaggerated. So you might not only say bad things about the person and talk about their bad traits, but you might focus on them tremendously. So that what you see that she's doing is not so unusual, but it is exaggerated. It's much more than you see in daily life because of the stress of the situation.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Burkhoff?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Doctor, when you were talking about the defendant going into the observation cell with Mr. Early, remember talking about that?
The observation cell, you mean that where they go for a suicide watch?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Isn't it true that she went in that observation cell sometime late in the evening of the 5th and came out in the morning of the 6th?
Yes, that's true.
And when she came out, she was spoken to by Louise Hines.
That's correct.
And when Ms. Hines asked the defendant if she still felt that she might be suicidal, the defendant said the situation is resolved. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, this 86 Milan test that you talked about, how we have to be careful in interpreting it, isn't it true that the Milan test in 1986 was interpreted by a trained clinician?
Yes, it was interpreted by Dr. Louis Nydorf and Dr. Gary Levinson.
Right. And they found the test to be valid, didn't they?
What do you mean by valid?
Well, they didn't see anything in terms of malingering or anything that would cause them not to believe the test. Is that correct?
Well, there's no place in any of the notes, in any of the documents that I read that anybody referred to whether the Milan test reflected what they saw. And in fact,
So in other words, Doctor, your answer is they didn't find it valid?
no, I didn't say that at all.
Well,
And in fact, if you'd let me finish.
no, I'm sorry, but I
Okay.
just like you to listen to my question, then you can, if you can't answer yes or no, then just tell me.
All
I
right.
feel comfortable. The hospital staff at Claremont did rely on this Milan test, didn't they?
It doesn't state if they relied on it or not. You can draw your own conclusions, but it doesn't state that.
Didn't Dr. Levinson, the psychiatrist that examined the defendant, rely on the Milan test?
I don't know if he did. I'm assuming that he read it and relied on it.
So he did rely on the Milan test, is that correct?
I think he considered it. I'm assuming that he considered it.
And if he thought it was invalid, he wouldn't have relied on it, would he?
Well, that's difficult for me to answer with a yes or
Can't answer
no.
that, Then don't answer.
Okay.
Let me show you part of Dr. Levinson's report here at Claremont Hospital. Why don't you read that paragraph there and see whether or not he relied on the Milan test?
Is this Dr. Levinson's
Yeah, the next
report?
page has the signature.
Okay. Yes, he did rely on it.
Okay. So he didn't see anything wrong with the Milan test, did he?
Well, I don't think you can make that statement.
Okay,
I disagree with that.
okay. And after reviewing the Milan test, didn't Dr. Levinson diagnose the defendant as borderline?
On axis 2, yes.
And didn't he also see a pervasive personality disorder, histrionic, antisocial, and borderline features?
No, I think he's quoting from the Milan when he's talking there. He diagnosed her as a borderline personality disorder.
Doesn't he say the other primary diagnosis noted was a pervasive personality disorder?
That's a direct quote from the test, I believe.
It is?
Yes.
And he didn't disagree with that, I take it.
Well, his diagnosis was on axis 1, a bipolar manic depressive disorder, and on
That's
axis 2, a borderline personality disorder.
Right, and he didn't disagree with Milan's finding that she was bipolar, that she was, or strike that she was borderline, that she was histrionic, she was antisocial. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. That's a misreading of the diagnosis.
Doesn't he say the other primary diagnosis was a pervasive personality disorder, which is seen as a mixed personality disorder with histrionic, antisocial, and borderline features? Doesn't he say that?
Those aren't his words. He's quoting from the test. Obviously, he disagreed with that diagnosis because he didn't give her that diagnosis. He gave her this diagnosis, which is different from that one. So I'm inferring from that he disagreed with that. He gave her a diagnosis, axis 2, borderline personality disorder, period. He gave her a diagnosis, axis 1, bipolar affective disorder. I'm sorry, bipolar affective disorder, mixed type, hypomanic phase. So his diagnosis is different from what he is quoting from the Milan.
But he still diagnoses her as a borderline, doesn't he?
That's correct.
And you're saying that the Milan did show her to be, have the antisocial, histrionic, and borderline features.
I didn't say that the Milan showed her to be that. I said, I think very clearly that what you get from the Milan are hypotheses. And some of the hypotheses included somatization disorder, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, antisocial characteristics. Dr. Levinson looked at that and he selected bipolar disorder and borderline disorder.
So you're saying that the Milan does not show anything determinative, it just shows hypotheses.
That's correct, and that's what I read in the caveat.
And that would include Dr. Friedman's testing that you relied on as well. Those would be hypotheses.
That's correct.
And that would also be the MMPI. Those would be hypotheses.
That's correct.
So when you say the defendant has the depression is shown in the testing that was administered by Dr. Friedman and relied upon by yourself, that would be hypotheses as to the testing and what it showed.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, defense counsel talked about manipulation in, I guess, the perspective of the way his histrionics and borderlines manipulate. And he talked about sending flowers and how that might be a manipulation. Remember that testimony?
Yes.
His questions. Are we saying that that's the way borderlines and histrionics manipulate? They send people flowers?
I think that is a description of a normal type of manipulation, not a pathological type of manipulation.
And when a borderline or a histrionic manipulates, it's a much more different type of manipulation. Isn't that correct?
Well, when you're talking about manipulation and saying, and this is a symptom of a disorder, you're talking about it in a way that's exaggerated. It's more than normal. So it might involve sending flowers, but it would be, you would be inferring from that there's some pathological process going on.
Pathological meaning that either hurts the person or it can hurt other people. Isn't that correct?
Well, that it's exaggerated from normal, not necessarily that it hurts the person or it hurts others, although it may.
Well, pathological means bad, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't mean bad, it means sick.
Sick. And it also means that it could hurt other people. Isn't that correct?
Well, I think you're taking that out of context.
Okay. Are you saying that borderlines and histrionics don't hurt other people with their manipulation?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay. Borderlines don't need to feel powerless, do they, before they get angry?
Say that again?
Well, there was some questioning by the defense attorney about powerlessness, and I think you agreed to some extent, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that borderlines, when they feel powerless, they get mad. Is that what you testified to, or am I misstating that?
Well, I think that's an oversimplification.
Okay, so borderlines don't have to feel powerless to get angry, do they?
No, not at all.
In fact, that's one of the hallmarks of the borderline personality, that a very
It is not overruled.
is one of the hallmarks of borderlines, that a very small slight, or maybe something that wouldn't even be taken as a slight or an insult by other people, borderlines react with rage, hostility, and inappropriate anger.
That is something that you will see in a borderline personality disorder, that they're very reactive, and the slight or the provocation will not be obviously or objectively that great.
But,
So it's-
but the answer, but I guess my question was, don't borderlines interacting with somebody else, and the other person says something that's innocuous, don't borderlines often just fly off the handle as a result of that?
I would disagree with the word often. It would certainly depend upon the situation and the amount of stress in the person's life and what else is going on. So that if you have if you're working with someone who has a borderline personality
So your answer is
disorder,
no? Is your answer no to that?
no, I just disagreed with
You
your
disagree with
use
what I
of the word often.
Okay.
Isn't that one of the diagnostic criteria though for borderline?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was just the way you phrased that I thought was misleading.
Well, they do it enough so that that's one of the, they fly off the handle enough, so that's one of the diagnostic criteria.
That's correct.
Okay. I take it you did read Dr. Nelson's notes?
Yes, I did read
Okay.
Dr. Nelson.
He was the defendant psychiatrist for a period of years.
I read Dr. Nelson's notes.
He was the defendant psychiatrist for a period of years.
I don't know if I'd have to refer to my notes to see how long he saw her and what years, but he certainly knew her over a span of years.
Knew her fairly well.
I don't know about that, but he knew her.
Didn't Dr. Nelson see the defendant 20 times between February of 1987 and July of 1989? Would you quarrel with those dates?
No, I think that's what I remember.
Didn't he say that, and did you consider this, that the defendant says that she's so mad at Dan, well, his assessment of the defendant was that she was so mad at Dan that it interferes with the resolution of the issues.
Yes,
And he also says that the defendant projects and blames, sees things in black and white, hates her husband's guts.
yes, good. I see where you're reading so that I can read
Sure.
along with you. Yeah, I don't think I have these notes, but I can read along with this.
Okay.
Did they identify which notes of those, are those Dr. Nelson's notes, copies of?
Dr. Nelson's notes, sometime I'll show the defense counsel.
Go to him first.
Well, I'm just asking where they're from, that's all. Just.
Dr. Nelson. So she did say that she hated the defendant's guts, or Dan's guts, is that correct? According to
That's
Dr. Nelson.
according to Dr. Nelson, yes.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
And depending on what was going on in either the court hearings or visitation, may reflect her feelings. This would be the splitting we talked about Dan at the time.
Objection that counts as speculation. It's also beyond the scope of a recross.
Well, sustained on the last round.
Beyond the scope of recross,
Yeah. Redirect, she spoke himself. Beyond scope of redirect.
I just, the last question that was asked was about this note here.
Yes.
Okay, I'm asking, you understand that, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Is
Regarding-
that, would that be an example? Do you know what was going on in Elizabeth Broderick's life or child custody or anything else surrounding that event when she made that statement?
Well, and yes, in terms of the what had been going on all along, yes,
Okay. But you don't know what specific day that was done?
that's correct. I
Obviously.
don't know that.
Okay, you don't know what might have happened, what phone calls she might have gotten, how she feels.
That's correct.
And Elizabeth Broderick will talk with, when she makes a statement, it'll be,
Objection. Your Honor.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Is that a statement that would be unusual given what your diagnosis and how she looks at her world around her?
No, that's not abnormal.
I have no further questions.
Recross.
None, Your Honor.
Witness be excused.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
And that also ends our day. Gabby, those are the little teeny tiny yellow Dixie cups that we've seen. Little teeny tiny ones. That was painful. Let me check because I think our next, the next time, which won't be tomorrow, will be Thursday, witnesses that we get, yes, I think are the judges that I believe were involved in her divorce. The ones that Betty kept complaining about that Dan was meeting with in chambers before the hearings, and that when she would come into the hearings, that all the attorneys and the judges would come out of the court, the judges' chambers. So I've not been watching many trials. I don't know that I've ever watched a trial where I've seen judges called to as witnesses. We did watch one. It was an exoneration hearing where the prosecutor for the original trial came in and testified. That was interesting because he was a lot older, and I'm like, he doesn't even probably. It'd been 30 some years, who knows how many trials he had tried during that time. Oh, well, painful enough that, painful. I don't know. Thought I was going to say something, but I won't. It's just interesting. It's a lot of kind of laying out the blame game. I know that Betty has supporters out there, and I don't know. She unalived 2 people. So that's kind of a hard one for me to support her. But I will say this. Dan was bad. Linda was bad. Betty was bad. But we only get Betty's side. And Betty's side always paints Betty as nothing but the victim. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that she was 100% the victim 100% of the time, because she had other actions that she does kind of tell on herself, maybe not on purpose, that say she wasn't the victim all the time. She wasn't the victim when she ran her car into Dan's front door. She wasn't the victim when she set Dan's clothes on fire. There's lots of things that she wasn't the victim of. She may have reacted out of something he did, but I don't know. It's just a weird, crazy trial, and Betty's testimony was really a lot. But the stars of the show have been the mannequins. No, Flashman, I will not be here tomorrow. Tomorrow is my dinner with my dad and my brother and my sister. My sister is now here. So that's what I will not be here tomorrow night, but I will be back Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Eastern time, where we will continue on with the testimony for Betty's defense and see what we get from these judges. They are being called on the defense's side, as far as I can tell. So I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see what they have to say. I would understand it more if they were called on the state side. But what do I know? Not a lot. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, everyone that came over from Ada's. I hope you guys all have a great night. Enjoy the last. I keep telling my husband, like, summer's over. He's like, summer's not over. August is coming. It's basically over. So enjoy the rest of your summer days while we have them before we get into crappy winter and it's cold. Yes. A testifying mannequin. They have the best testimony, probably the quietest too, and they don't have broken tear ducts. Or maybe they do. All right, guys. See you guys all on Thursday. And enjoy your Wednesday. So I won't see you tomorrow. All right. Have a good night.